Hey, listeners, and welcome to the You Are Epic podcast. This is where we honour the people who've helped build not just our industry, but our communities. I'm Angela Hucker, and I am so glad that you're here. So, I'm taking the time to sit down with people who've been in construction for years, people who've been through the ups, the downs, and everything in between. You're going to hear real stories of resilience, growth, and moments that shaped who they are. This podcast is for those that want to learn more from people who've been walking this path for some time, and they're helping to lift up others and quietly making a difference along the way. It's also to show you that your journey matters and your voice matters. And in case you've forgotten, you are epic. Let's get into it. Okay, so today's guest is Nick Limbrey, a construction leader with more than 20 years' experience delivering complex builds across sectors including defence, health, retail, social housing, marine, and public infrastructure. Starting his journey as a building cadet, Nick has worked his way up to construction manager with BESIX Watpac. Known for cultivating loyal teams and long-term relationships, he brings deep industry insight and a genuine passion for building better cultures. A strong advocate for well-being, equity, and social sustainability, Nick is committed to shaping a more progressive and inclusive construction industry. So thanks for joining us, Nick. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Angela.
You're most welcome. So what I'd love to start off with first, because I'm always really interested and curious how people get started in this industry. So how did you get started in construction as a building cadet?
Oh, it's a great question. Going through, I guess, my younger years and school, I wasn't the most academic person. I certainly wasn't poor at academia, but I was more interested in the kind of social relationships and practical sides of learning and engaging with others. So, as I kind of came to the end of my schooling, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea what kind of results I was going to get. So I was looking at going to TAFE, apprenticeships, potentially university, but didn't really know. All I knew is I wanted to do something that was hands-on and involved working with people, and ideally not in I guess, an office environment every day where I just turned up to a desk, and tapped away at a keyboard. So, look, I ended up enrolling in construction management degree. I really didn't know what I was actually going to do with that degree. So I was pleasantly surprised to find out the diversity of different roles that you could do
Yeah.
in that industry. So just one degree could lead to 40 different jobs. So yeah, and it's met that kind of practical relationship, communication driven, I guess, career for me. So yeah, I was lucky, I guess.
I love that. And so with that diversity under that construction management degree, what sort of things do you see there with that diversity?
Yeah, look, anywhere between, I guess, working client side for, government or private organisations, all the way through to, being a supervisor on a site. There's a huge diversity there. Working as a consultant, working in
Mm.
sustainability, working in safety, just a huge array of different, I guess, sub-career options. And I think the thing that I've really enjoyed seeing over the last 20 years is you don't have to necessarily just pick one job or one role, and you can actually take a pivot without actually leaving the industry.
Mm.
To undertake a different role.
And I think this
Yeah.
is something that's really important given the way that the industry is in its present moment, where it's trying to attract more people to the industry and more minority groups with women as
Yep.
well. Is that it's not just about the trades roles. There's a whole suite of other roles that are available in the industry like this, with this construction management and the diversity that you can get in that aspect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, in more recent years, I've seen a lot more people making those pivots to suit their where they're at in their life, where they're at
Mm.
with family. If times are getting a bit too stressful, and they decide they want to take a different role that might be more flexible for working at home or going part time and things like that. So yeah, the your trajectory is not mapped out for you day one, and you can move around a lot, which I'm finding to become more and more common. So yeah, really good.
And I think that's the beauty in construction as well, is that there is so many different paths that you can take, and it's not necessarily always linear. It's like you can work client side, you can work principal contractor, you can work subcontractor, and there's so much, as you touched on, that diversity, and it's the options are really quite endless with, the different things you can work on, and particularly, the suite of projects and the sectors that you've worked in as well with defense and marine and social and things like that as well. The different types of areas you can work within the industry is so varied.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you can certainly do work on projects or in teams that are far more rewarding based on what you're actually building and what you're contributing to that. So, even if you're not diversifying in your role, you might be diversifying in the type of organization you work for and the types of projects they do and how that suits your values. That is something as well that I'm conscious of. You don't always have to work for a big tier one building,
Mm.
high-rise buildings. You could be working on projects that are probably far less in the spotlight, but they might be more meaningful to you or be more local to you. Which really helps as well.
Especially some of those projects that are for communities and social as well, social outcomes as well, which can be quite rewarding and fulfilling for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with some of the projects that you've worked on, um, is there one that's like a real standout for you that you've had in your time?
I get asked this quite a lot, actually. Look, it is always good to, drive past a project or whatnot. And I've got two kids now, and you can point out and say, oh,
Yeah.
Daddy built that. I didn't really build any of it, but I contributed as part of a team. But I often look back on projects and think it's not always about what you're building, it's who you're building it with and that kind
Mm,
of team and camaraderie. Some of the toughest jobs, jobs that didn't necessarily make money or win awards are ones that I look back on really favorably because of the experience and the relationships. There's a couple of jobs that jump to mind, but one in particular would be the Museum of Contemporary Art, actually up here in Sydney, which is in Circular Quay. Fantastic location, really tough job, but we were working with a whole host of stakeholders, and I think we formed some really good relationships. Some really tough times on the job, don't get me wrong,
mm,
but it was all about the team. And you look back on it now, and like I said, it happens to be in quite an iconic location, so it's good to
mm,
look at it and go, look, I contributed to this. So yeah, that's definitely one that and it's public infrastructure as well, so people come to it, they enjoy it.
mm.
It adds to the skyline, so you can feel proud of that.
Absolutely. And the part that I really love of what you've said there is yes, the project was tough, but it was the team.
Mm.
And I think it's the team that actually can help make a project or help break a project because you're with them all the time. Essentially,
Absolutely.
like
More
you're
more than
with
you are with your family.
exactly more than your own family. So what would define a good team for you?
Look, a good team for me is a team that contributes evenly and fairly and to their ability, I guess. So you're creating an environment where people are free to bring their best, to give their best, and if they're unable to for different reasons, they feel comfortable enough communicating with the team. I'm having a challenge here, I need help there. And I think if you can create that environment where people feel genuinely valued, genuinely welcomed, and they can bring their best,
Mm,
I think that's all you can really ask for. So you're creating that environment for people to thrive, and when people thrive and they feel valued and contribute, they often repay that in loyalty, tenfold. So that's what I always try to do.
mm,
There's always stresses and things that come up on projects and
mm.
outside of work as well that sometimes, compromise that. But I think if you can create that platform and that environment initially, the world's, I guess, the individual and the team's oyster.
So here's a curly one for you then. Do you think the industry does that well, or do you think there's room for improvement there?
I think you know the answer to that question, but
I know.
look, the industry doesn't do it consistently well. So there's
Mm,
certainly businesses, teams, or pockets of the industry that are certainly improving. I look back, 10 years, 20 years, the amount of progress in the industry when it comes to inclusion, the treatment of workers, and I mean all the way up and down the chain, appreciation for well-being and psychosocial health. All of that is improving. It's just slow, and it is inconsistent. So you could go from one project or one business to another, and there wouldn't be a lot of consistency in how that's done. And there are still teams or businesses or pockets of the industry that are very hard down the line, traditional construction industry as we know it, and it takes a long time to break that stigma that people have about the industry when they think about what construction industry and working in construction looks like. A lot of people have in their mind a pretty rough fluoro vest industry that is working 6 days a week, 10, 12-hour days. And yeah, we're trying to break that slowly but surely.
And it is a process, like you're spot on. It is an absolute process, and especially with the legislation that's come out in the last couple of years with the psychosocial hazards and things as well.
Mm.
It's a complete overhaul of the industry as to how it has traditionally been to how it's actually moving forward. So,
Yeah, and look, our whole industry is based around management of risk. And the thing about risk is you only know what you know, and there's physical things and things that you can see. So, in the conventional sense of safety, we can manage risk because you can see a fall from height or a potential hazard. But when you talk about mental health and psychosocial health, you can't see that. And everyone comes to work with a different background, different predisposition, and unless you're creating an environment where people are willing to talk about what they're going through or what their issue is, there could be a lot of hazards that go unnoticed, and often they're the things that cause people to leave the industry because of stress or anxiety or other things, which is a real shame because it's reducing the talent pool, and often we lose some really good people because of that. So yeah, hopefully it is improving and continues to.
have you seen anything in your time of some great initiatives that's been able to help in that space, or anything that even may be happening within the company you're currently working for?
Yeah, look, we're certainly having the conversation more. I don't think there's a one silver bullet to resolve it because, like I said, everyone is different. Everyone brings their own perspective and history and way of working. But I think the conversation is being had a lot more. It's a lot more headline when it comes to um, talking about mental health, talking about how you are more deeply than just the conversational, how's your day? All good, whatever. I'm getting a lot more people telling me, oh, that they're not good at the moment or whatever, which I think is really useful. And the more people do it and observe others being more vulnerable and more open, I think it's a bit contagious as well. So, look, I think the only thing that the industry has started to really do better, other than have some employee assistance programs and training programs about wellness and mental health, is just having the conversation. So
Mm.
we we have psychosocial and mental health committees and risk registers and so forth. And a lot of the time, it's not about that register or that committee. It's about the fact that that's facilitating the conversation. That's what I feel anyway. Like I said, no silver bullet at the moment.
No, there isn't. But there was one word that you said that was actually really key in this, and I
Yeah.
think it is that vulnerability, because the industry has always had this toughness and
Mm,
machoism, and like you've got to be strong and resilient, because it's not an easy industry by any means. There's a lot of
mm,
pressure, there is a lot of stress. It's a constantly changing industry with, you know, on a day-to-day basis, it could be, people are turning up sick, or, you
mm,
might have concrete trucks who are delayed, or there might be some materials that have been held up, or whatever. There's so many variables that can happen
mm.
on a construction site, but it's having that vulnerability and creating that safe space to actually say, hey, I'm not okay and I'm not coping.
Yeah. You're right. And the vulnerability, if you show it and you can be, vulnerable or show some humility or whatever else, like I said, it's contagious and others will start doing it.
Mm,
And particularly leaders. Look, the younger generations of people coming through the industry now are naturally showing that as well. So I think that's a really good trait that they're not afraid to talk up for the good and the bad of that. At least you know where you stand. And I think having these conversations leads to initiatives, leads to more support, leads to people having conversations about flexible work or what their needs are, or hey, I really need a break. Can I have a day off next week? It leads to things like we have wellbeing days now, in addition to our other leave policies, things like that. most businesses are doing or trialing, 5-day work weeks and things like that,
Mm.
where it provides people with more time for family. But I don't think those are initiatives in themselves that just come out of nowhere. They come out of those conversations. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Absolutely. And so what's for yourself, what would define, and I know you kind of touched on it before, but you as a construction manager, obviously you're across a lot of stuff with subcontractors and tradespeople and, managing the site and managing the actual construction side of it. What would make a good team for you, as a construction manager to go ahead and build a project?
Yeah, alignment is the thing that jumps straight to mind. So construction involves so many different parties, the supply chain, clients,
Mm.
designers, consultants, advisors, all sorts of people. And understandably, each of those organisations has different drivers. Everyone's here to make some money and, be sustainable as a business. But at the same time, you need to be genuinely aligned with what you're trying to achieve. And it's easy to say, very hard to do. And often you don't really understand the malignment of a team until a pressure or stress situation comes and you realize that someone's not towing the line and trying to help you get to where you get to. So, constant communication about what is trying to be achieved at a macro level and then what that actually means for that individual, whether it be a subcontractor or an actual individual. What is your contribution when you turn up to work in the morning? What does that mean and how does it contribute to our end goal? So, look, we spend a lot of time in our business and on our projects trying to retain alignment. And sometimes it's surprising what people say when when you talk to them about, oh, what are you trying to achieve out of this project? And they tell you something, you go, oh, God, okay, I didn't realize that was important to you or that
Yeah.
was your perspective. But understanding what they're trying to achieve, what you're trying to achieve, and how you can do that together is really, really key. And you often have to check in on that and say, hold on, what's been happening or your actions aren't contributing to the greater good. Let's just re-steer that energy to make
Yeah.
sure that we stay on track. So it's like herding cats sometimes.
I can imagine. So if I was to read between the lines with that, is
Yeah.
that actually everyone working to a set of shared values and a goal,
Yeah, so it's
and
a
that
vision.
everyone's aligned to achieve that?
Yeah, we break it into a number of components. It's kind of like the vision and the objective, I guess, or in other terms, a mission statement. It's how you're going to do that, and then the actual behaviours, and we often put them into phrases like the I will and I won't kind of behaviours
Mm.
as to how we're going to achieve that shared goal. So we spend a fair bit of time on projects with our clients, with our key partners to say these are the behaviours that we will do, or the things that we will do, and we're all going to commit to that. And these are the things that we won't do because they're barriers to progress or they're going to upset the apple cart. And when you put them into tangible behaviors, you can hold people accountable to that. When you're on a site or in a meeting or someone's sending an email or displaying a certain trait, you say, hold on, we all agree that we won't do
Mm.
this. And I'm going to
Yeah.
hold you now personally accountable because we all sat there and said if we start doing this, we're not going to get to our goal. So I think that alignment piece needs to come down to accountable actions that are practical and you can put up on a wall and say this is what we all agree.
I love that. And is there some common themes that come through as to what the I will behaviors are and the I won't behaviors?
A lot of it centralizes when you really distill it down into communication, respect.
Mm.
A lot of it, as simple as that sounds, when we're building highly technical and complex and big projects, we're still in a very relationship-based business that relies
Okay.
on hundreds and thousands of people,
Yeah.
some who are on the project from day one to the end, and some who just come in for a couple of days.
Mm.
And it's about how we communicate, how we do that respectfully. Often it's, the face to face, it's the phone calls, it's not
Mm.
sending, certain emails or, having conversations and being a person before just, butting heads, because there's a high propensity for that to happen on
Absolutely.
projects.
And I think
Yeah.
that the two things that you said there, the respect and the communication, because that's where it can get lost in the stress. Because
Yeah.
if you're not respectful and you're not communicating well, that's where things can escalate and it can end up being a volcano, really, that explodes. So,
Yeah, you can resolve a lot of things in a 1 minute phone call that other people try to do with 10 emails back and forth and people getting angry with each other behind a
Yeah.
computer screen. So we try to, I guess, in that stay productive and efficient too. So it's acknowledging that there's quicker ways to do things,
Mm.
and like I said, sitting behind a computer sending an angry email is not going to get it done, but meeting together face to face and resolving an issue with an aligned set of goals normally makes it happen quicker, and you can walk away with a smile on your face.
And it's an easier way to resolve things because you can sit there, nut it out, come to an agreement. Okay, away we go. And when you're sitting behind the keyboard, things can get lost in translation as well because how you word it is not necessarily how it's going to be received. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Now I know one thing because I had the pleasure of sitting on a panel with you at Sydney Build, and one thing that you're really passionate about in the industry as well is increasing the gender equity in the industry as well. So would you like to share a little bit more about that and what BESIC is doing in that space as well? So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an area of passion for mine, not because specifically about gender equity, but it's the idea that the cross section of the demographic, of the industry is so far removed from the cross section of the societies we work in. So to think that 51% of the population is female, but within construction it's less than
mm,
10% on average is absurd. And I'm
mm,
sure there's a few other industries where that's flipped, but construction's such a large industry and large employer, but it's such a great career, and it's one of those areas where I think that there is so much benefit to be had to have a better representation of society within our organisations. It leads to more innovation, more professionalism in the
yes,
way we behave.
yes.
There's a whole lot of benefits that are well documented. I mean, DCA does a great job in doing that as well. So there's a great argument for it. And what really frustrates me is that when opportunities arise, when we do get more diverse people employed in the industry, that they aren't enjoying as long and sustainable careers as their male counterparts. They're
Mm,
leaving careers early. They're not being supported through, whether it be a parenting journey or other. Um, and they just don't have as long successful careers as their male counterparts, and that often leads to that, I guess, a misrepresentation at senior levels as well. So we often find that there's a lot of women coming into the industry as cadets, graduates, engineers, contracts administrators, but they're underrepresented once you get to senior levels. So I'd like to see, as the years and decades go by, that those people that are entering in the industry young now
mm,
are able to be supported and sustained in the industry so that they can grow into those senior roles, and we're not losing them because they're such a great asset to, like I said, the outcomes of our teams, the success of projects. So look, in terms of what we're doing with it, so as part of our attraction and recruitment process, we are attempting to achieve 50-50 employment. So we'll make sure that there's always resumes, like gender split resumes. In our business, we targeted 25% female representation in our business by 2025. We're currently at 24%, so we've got
oh wow.
5 months to go. So
You might
look, let's
there, you'll get there.
but in terms of where we came from 3 or 4 years ago when we announced that target, it's leaps and bounds. I can specifically talk for New South Wales. A few of our project teams are over 40% female represented in our teams. So you go to a site office today compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it is vastly different. And I don't just mean the people sitting behind the desks. I mean, the facilities we provide, the amenities we provide, it's just more conducive to inclusion and well-being. And I think
Mm,
that's not just the passage of time, but that's the introduction of greater diversity within our teams that are, you know, pushing, seeking, desiring for more, to make sure that our workplaces are an attractive place to come, because if you're turning into a side office, dingy little side office that's filthy and as people probably come to expect it from years gone by, that's not a place that's attractive for people to come to work, particularly a diverse range of people. So I've noticed that as a big thing that's changed in terms of the facilities we provide, and that's not just bathrooms, but that's the whole box and dice. Um, Retention is a big one. So we spend a lot of time in training, upskilling, and particular programs for the females in our business. So we run a program called, well, they're lean-in circles. So you might be aware of lean-in circles, but essentially we have females within the business that are grouped up in circles, if you will. We run formal programs for our lean-ins where we will get a guest speaker or a trainer in to run training on a particular issue that might be relevant to the females in our business, whether it be assertive communication skills or whatever it might be, which is one of the topics of a recent one. And then between those more formal training sessions, those circles meet up. It might be every 2 months, it might be every 3 months, it might be every month. And they're just essentially creating a network where people can talk about issues they might not be comfortable talking to their immediate team about, people going through similar issues, just coping in the industry. And we have a male ally that sits within those circles as well, just to provide a different opinion, sometimes a different perspective on the issues, but also engage in the conversations, to understand, areas of concern or what's going on. So, we found them particularly successful over the last few years. So we run them nationally, which is great.
That's awesome. And so has that helped with improving the retention of females as well?
Look, I think it has. How tangible that is from a statistic perspective, I can't quite tell you, but certainly from what I observe in our teams, absolutely. I mean, our retention rate generally is quite good. We have a lot of long-term employees. But yeah, I'd like to see more women being promoted into those senior roles. So we do have a lot more than we used to. Project managers, project directors, senior design managers. We've got multiple people in our group leadership team, probably not in conventional construction operations roles, which I think is where we've got to move to next. So they're still primarily in, legal, HR, and other supporting functions, not construction operations. But I do see a big pathway in that. We've had a lot of females in our business be promoted to senior leaders in project teams, and the next, logical step is for that to extend into, corporate. Yeah.
Awesome. And I know one of the other things that you shared when we met in Sydney at Sydney Build was about the procuring from women-owned businesses as well.
Yep. Yep. So that's becoming a more topical conversation, particularly with our government clients. So for a long time, we've been targeting and measuring and having initiatives in place for women in construction and also women in trades and non-traditional roles. That is now pushing into, yes, female-owned businesses. So similar to our Indigenous owned businesses and Indigenous participation, it's taking a similar journey. So we've recently had a couple of government clients mandate some targets in that space, which I think is really good. What isn't always there is, the knowledge about, which businesses are female owned. And, it's not always visible. There are some registers available, but it's not probably as well documented as Indigenous owned businesses. And often you won't see the business leader. They're, not on the ground in the day-to-day. They're owning the business. They're off in the head office, and you don't actually know that it's a female-owned business. So it's quite possible that we are contracting with some that we don't know of, and there's probably some that there's great alternatives that are female-owned businesses that we should be giving more of a chance, working for our business. So, I've got a particular opportunity I'm working on at the moment that has some targets in that space, and I'm pleased to say that we've identified a couple of major female-owned contractors or subcontractors that we're looking to engage on that, which is really good.
Awesome. So from your perspective as someone who needs to engage those services, what would actually help make it easier to be able to find those businesses?
Yeah, look, a centralised register, like similar to Supply Nation for Indigenous businesses, where the ownership structure of a business is assessed independently, or someone applies and says, look, we're majority owned by female, and can actually register their business, and then that's then available on a centralised register. So like I said, I'm aware of a couple of different registers run fairly independently, I guess. But yeah, it's not very centralized. So
Mm.
that would certainly help. When we procure services, we have returnable schedules that we send out and say, look, can you fill
Mm.
this in? A lot of mandatory things about insurances and ownership and participation. We could start asking on those, hey, can you tell me more about the ownership and leadership of the business? And that way we can start collating our own understanding of that, because yeah, it's not always obvious.
No, it's not.
No. But the step down from the ownership, I think, is also businesses that have women in leadership positions. Because, we talk a lot about, women in construction, women in non-traditional roles or trades, female-owned businesses, like you said, Angela. But then there's that space in the middle where there's the women in leadership. So they might not be owning the
Mm.
business, but they're demonstrating a great senior capacity, in running a business or a major part of the
Mm.
business. And I think that should be, um, you know, observed, rewarded, recognised, as an important feature. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's to help increase that. It's another way to help increase that gender equity outside of the box as well, rather than, having your FTEs or your PTs and things like that, that you can do it through your procurement and your supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly for the people who really subscribe to the adage of, you can't be what you can't see. And certain people,
Mm.
that's more important to them than others. But if that is something that's important to you, if we make it more visible and we acknowledge it or recognize it more, then for those people that are thinking, oh, construction's not for me, I can't see a long-term future here, I might drop out and go do something else. If they can see it more actively,
Right.
it may be that thing that they need to stay in the industry and go, that could be me.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I agree. I agree. Now, what I'd love to ask is another curly question, if that's okay. But
Yeah.
have you got a moment that you've had in your time, either in a management position or just even working through as a cadet, just anything in your history that was kind of really challenging for you, but it actually helped make you learn something about yourself and grow more as a person. And it was sort of like, as you're going through it at the time, it's like, damn, this is so hard. Why am I having to deal with this? And then you kind of get through the other side. It's like, oh, wow, look at what I've achieved as a result of going through that challenge.
Mm. You look, there's probably a thousand of those moments, but I
I
think one
can
that
imagine.
really jumps up is that I guess as you go through your career, there's different traits and attributes and behaviors that suit you well at a time based on the role that you're doing. So, when you're, younger in your career, being very detail oriented, being, like all over those little bits and pieces. And then as you get more senior, you probably can't be as intimately involved and know everything that you need to know. So I remember being on the first job that I did as a project manager, I still felt that I needed to control everything and needed to know all the details. And I probably felt like I was working at 300% capacity,
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
everything,
yeah.
which was fine for that kind of first project or two, because the projects were small enough that I could probably get across that level of detail. I was working very hard and burning the candle at both ends. But
Yeah.
I then went on to a much larger job, and I had a realization that I had a team of 30 something people under me, and I was still trying to get across everything and working 300%. But what I realized is I wasn't supporting those other 30 people enough.
Mm.
So whilst I felt like I was working at 300% capacity,
Yeah.
all of those people might have been not supported enough to work to their full potential. So I quickly realized that investing more time in supporting them, creating that team environment, celebrating success more, just really
Mm.
promoting a better place to work meant that they could all work, at their full capacity. Even if I felt like I was doing less, I was actually doing more because I was supporting them to fulfill their
Mm.
role to their fullest. So I think that was a big shift for me to prioritize, yeah, team and wellness and those kind of things, recognizing that that actually had a better cumulative result than me working super hard,
Yeah,
if you
and
know
you
what I
doing
mean.
the 300% as well. So,
Yeah. So, that was a big realization for me, and it is hard to let go of the detail sometimes.
oh,
But you have to, and you got to trust that those other people in your team are filling those gaps and to be honest, they probably do it better than I could now anyway. So
And that's the
yeah,
big part, isn't it? It's letting go of the reins and empowering your people and trusting them that they will do the right thing. So
yeah. But it's a big lesson for me in a sustainable work-life balance as well, because if I kept going on that trajectory, yeah, that wouldn't have led to great outcomes. Let's just
no,
say. So yeah,
no. Well, I'm glad you've learnt that valuable lesson and that it didn't get to a point where it, was detrimental for you. So
yeah,
it's a big thing and it's about that micromanaging, isn't it? And it's just that no, just let go, let go, let go. And it is hard
yeah,
because you do feel like it's your baby as well in some sense. So and that you've got the responsibility and ownership of it. So
yeah,
but it
yeah.
is that ownership. So what would you like to see for the industry moving forward? What kind of aspirations would you like to see fulfilled moving
Yeah,
forward?
look, I've got aspirations that we get rid of the stigma that still surrounds, large parts of construction today, that where people don't see it as a viable career option for them because of, like I said, that historical stigma, whether it be genderized or whether it be other areas of diversity, because you know, we have a labour shortage. We
Mm,
do value the contributions of, a diverse range of people and all of the benefits that brings. So I'd like it to be not a topic of conversation. Like it's just a
mm,
thing, you're finishing school. Hey, I can do construction, and you don't have parents or careers advisors or other people, potentially getting in the way, or boys or girls or people from diverse backgrounds thinking that it's not for them because I might be, yeah, not fit in. So, it's a slow process, but we are certainly getting better at it. So, yeah, my aspirations for construction is that we have a better representation of the cross section of society, and we need it. We need age diversity. We need the race, culture, gender, sexual orientation. All like we need everyone to feel like they can contribute and have a long, sustainable career and feel valued. And yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Not going to happen overnight, but it is. There's definitely there's definitely things that are moving in the right direction. So yeah,
And I do agree, things are moving in the right direction and construction is being promoted as a viable career choice to a lot of minority groups as well now. So,
yeah. Yeah, look, we've been doing a fair bit of work in education. We used to focus a lot on tertiary education, and the realization is that's too late. People have already made their mind up initially about what their short-term career looks like. And that was probably a bit selfish as well as an industry to be focusing on that because often it was, oh, let's focus on that because they're going to be the next people that are joining our business. So we might pick
mm,
up some cadets or graduates from here. Whereas now we're less selfish about that, and we're spending our time and effort at schools and not just high schools, at primary schools,
mm,
advocating for the industry, knowing that this is an investment in people that are going to be joining our industry in 10 years, 15 years, so forth. But really getting in early to say, hey, look, don't discount it. And when you think about construction, it's not just, the fluoro vest and the stop go sign that you see at the
mm,
front of a,
yeah,
or the guys out the front having a smoke, like, because that's
yeah,
the rough side of the industry that
I
people
know,
think about.
I know.
And you need to explain that, there's, like we said, design managers, sustainability, safety, quality, project management, contracts, procurement. There's so many different things. So yeah, we're spending a lot of time on that, and also at Careers Expos for high schools, where you do get to speak to not just students but their parents and really get their engagement and reaction as to, what is construction about. And I think when
Mm.
they see not people like myself, I can explain to them what it's about. But we have a lot of our younger and particularly female employees really interested in those programs, and they're ambassadors for a number of different organisations that do that. So I'm hoping that's going to make a big legacy impact. Yeah,
I think it will, and I mean it's there's a big shift that needs to happen, and the shift is starting, but it may still take 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, who knows? I mean,
mm.
it's like you're putting the wheels in motion, but the wheel still has to turn the full circle yet. So,
Yeah. Look, we try little bits and pieces all around the place. We're working with different social traders. We've got engagements with asylum seekers and refugees, giving
Mm,
employment opportunities. A lot of the time, they start as internships and then they become employment opportunities. And I think the more we see that and we hear their stories and they feel
mm,
welcomed, it will keep those cogs slowly turning in the
yeah.
right direction. Ability or disability is also an area that, look, it's really hard to tackle in construction, but
Mm,
certainly in the diversity kind of space, I think that's an area that we should be celebrating and tapping into more because there's some great attributes
oh yeah.
of the neurodiversity spectrum that the industry can really benefit from, and those individuals can benefit from being in the industry. So, yeah, we're definitely not narrow-minded in what our objectives are. We're just trying to balance them all and make sure that we're doing it sustainably and successfully, not just for us but for those people as well. Because the last thing we want to do is put them in
Yeah.
situations where that doesn't work. So yeah,
And that's the key part of it. It's not just about trying to find the people to get in and address a labor shortage, but it's about once we've got them, how do we
mm,
support them, like you touched on before, to make
yeah,
sure that it is sustainable and they do stay for the
yeah,
long haul. So
yeah,
because sadly, the statistics are showing for women, it's about 2 to 5 years that they're lasting in
mm,
the industry. And, that's something that obviously your company's working hard to overcome that as well with the initiatives that you've got in place, which I think is fabulous. So,
yeah. And look at it, and it's even worse in the statistics when it comes to apprenticeships and how many people are
yeah,
finishing apprenticeships,
yeah,
which is really tough because we're trying to maintain skills and trades, because they're so valuable to us.
yeah,
But they're not always being supported and celebrated.
no.
Um, so yeah, that's another area that's a pretty tough one to tackle. But I know different people are doing different things in that space, and hopefully we can see some progress.
Well, look, I think, as we said, it's all in progress. It's just one of those things that it does take time. I always have the saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, and
Mm.
to overhaul a traditional way in an industry that's been very traditional with how it's worked. And it's like this whole upheaval at the moment. Okay, we're throwing it all up in the air and we're going to try and start again and rebuild it again and make it better. It takes time and it's a process. So
Yeah, and look, at some of the times it's instigated by the genuine desire of individuals or businesses in that
yeah,
space. But look, we are getting a lot more government support in that space, which lifts
yeah,
the standard not just for an individual business or project or person that's got a passion for that, but it lifts the market. So I'm particularly keen to see the construction industry culture standard get rolled out more broadly as well,
mm,
which is primarily a New South Wales and Victorian government initiative at the moment. But having a better work-life balance, 5-day weeks, consistently improve the quality of amenities on our projects and things like that are all things that we should be getting behind and mandating, not just
mm.
it's good on that job, but not on this job, or it's good with that business, but not with that business, because we need to be more consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. There needs to be that consistency across the board, and it's not just something that the tier ones can do. That it's something that can be applied just a standard that everyone strives to. So, no, I think it's great. So, in closing, Nick, what I'd love to ask you, which I ask everyone, is
Yep.
there if there's one thing, one piece of Nick wisdom that you could pass on, and it might just be if ever I could say this to someone about construction, it would be this, and it could just be like a comment, a statement, a phrase, whatever it is, but just one piece of advice that you've gone, I'd just love to let people know this about construction, or just something to help them, that you could pass on and you could share. What would that be?
Dear. I needed some preparation for this question. Look, I could talk for days on this, but look, I think it's a two-sided thing. I think everyone should give everything and everyone a go. There's no reason why our industry and the diversity of roles, projects, potential there, there's not a spot for everyone.
Mm,
So that's, for people coming into the industry, seeking to diversify within the industry, but also for current employers and leaders to give people that go, find that opportunity, find that role, help support that person um, in their career journey, because everyone deserves a chance at, a long, rewarding, sustainable career because it's a fantastic industry, a huge employer, and we're always going to be building stuff. I think everyone should, yeah, have their fair go.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Thank you. And I think that's exactly right. Everyone deserves a fair go because, it is a great industry. You and I have been in the industry a long time and we wouldn't have stuck it out if it was, I mean, it's had its moments, don't get me wrong, but we wouldn't have stuck it out as long as we have if it was a terrible industry because it is quite rewarding. So great words there. I really appreciate it. And thank you for being an awesome male ally as well. So with wanting to help, women get into more leadership positions and, the work that you quietly do in the background with talking about this sort of stuff and advocating for this sort of stuff as a woman, like I thank you for that. So we need more males like you. So really appreciate it and appreciate you
Pleasure.
coming on and having this conversation with us. So thank you for your time, Nick.
No worries, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. I hope this conversation gave you something that you can take with you, whether it be a little bit of insight, inspiration, or maybe just a reminder that you're not alone. If it resonated with you, please share because we're better when we help build each other up. And remember that your experience, your story, and your journey, it all matters more than you know. Until next time, stay kind, stay connected, and never forget you are epic.